Y'all caught me online shopping.
Caught red-handed,
Caught
and
red-handed.
I may have instigated it.
Beth, that's just going to blame you. Bethany has told me some accessories for my machine that I might like, and I was shopping because if I
We all
add
do it.
3 more things, I get, you know how we do it.
Yeah, if you
Anyway,
add more, you'll get it tonight.
get it
And
tonight or get it for free shipping or whatever it is. We all do the things. It's totally fine. Welcome everybody. Here we are.
hey,
We're so excited.
last
I
day of our so long.
Last day of our so along. Welcome back. If y'all were here earlier today and caught me and Nathan, we're gonna chat for just a minute. I think about our Christmas in July.
Have you guys
Um,
seen our Christmas in July? Like, that's my first question is let us know in the chat if you have noticed all of the stuff that we're doing this week. And by the way, it's going into next week for Christmas in July, and we're going live every day.
every
And
day.
Melody went live Monday. Melody went live Tuesday. You'll see me on live tomorrow. I think we're both doing live on Thursday.
Yeah.
Friday. Like, we've got stuff going on all week. So if you've caught one of our Christmas in July or saw the newsletter, let us know in the chat. We'd love to know what you guys are thinking about it, because it's our first time kind of doing something like this.
Yeah. We've never really done a Christmas in July before. We did a 12 days of Christmas in December, which was super fun.
Yeah.
But this is our Christmas in July. We've got new products on special every day. They're
really
bundled
fun
in a new way.
Yeah.
Different than before. If you were with us during our live earlier about our mini glow with the mini tote together, there was a couple of comments that they were having issues with the discount, but I think we've got that all squared away. So that
Can I
should be
show
fine.
this? Can we just take a second and say thank you to our team that made this page for our website? Because
yes,
this
so
is our
cute.
Christmas in July page, and I'll drop a link to it in the chat in a second. But look how fun this is.
So cute.
They designed the whole thing. I love the light color because it is still summer. But here's the cool part. So every single day, we have a different promo, different product that's on sale. And you don't know what it is till the day of. Kind of like an advent calendar, okay?
Kind of like an advent calendar. It's so cute.
It varies every day, okay? And we have something really fun where the deal will go live that day. On our website, and you'll know about it here on our website, or if you get the email newsletters, you get it there. If you join the live for the day, you'll know about it there. And so if you go to the website, you'll see this. Each day it'll reveal a new deal. It'll let you know what the product is off, but then you can get an extra 15% off with the code holiday. So the product will be discounted on the website, but if you add the code holiday to checkout, you'll get an extra 15% off whatever the daily deal is. And it changes every day. And then right below it, you'll see when we're going live that day. And you can click watch the replay or notify me on YouTube when we go live. So all of this is here for you guys. And there's this is the one day, this is another day. So you'll see them. And then we have a last day reveal on the 31st. So we're not doing it on the weekends. Melody and I need our weekend breaks, okay? But we are doing it Monday through Friday this week and Monday through Thursday of next week. And so you're not going to want to miss it. Now, once a deal goes live, it stays live, correct, Melody?
Once the deal goes live, it will stay live. That is correct. We had, but there are limited quantities of some of this stuff. So my recommendation is to jump on it if you are wanting it. We had questions yesterday asking us to save on shipping. Can we hold on to products throughout the weeks, throughout our days and whatever? And you can keep it in your cart. We do have free shipping over $98. So if your cart total is that much, I would say go ahead and go, because then you can add stuff the next day if you want the next stuff, and get free shipping again if it's over $98. So either way we're good. That's totally fine. But there are limited quantities on some of them. So make sure you jump on it when you want it. Now, yesterday, on Monday, on our day one, we had our awesome flip and fold mats, which we talked about last week during our so-alongs, how they're Bethany's and one of our favorite products. You can go watch the replay of the one yesterday. Those are 30% off right now, plus that 15% off. So that's almost 45% off. That's like crazy town discounts for those.
That's nuts.
I know. It's really cool.
And I even told Melody, I was like, I need another flip and fold. I think I may just go buy it myself.
I know.
Because that's such a good deal. It feels wrong to even just ask you to send me another one for work.
Well, the thing is, like, for that especially, it's such a good deal. It's like maybe all my friends are getting that for Christmas.
I know.
Ooh, like
Ooh,
like
that's a good idea.
Especially the mini one. It just comes over to like just over $70, I think, something like that. Which is crazy. So like I'm gonna order some of them for my crafty friends because the flip and folds are great for sewing and quilting, but they're great for a lot of things. So we're very excited for that. And then today was our Glow Mini light board, which is the one that's about 10 by 13 with the Glow Mini tote, which is also our favorite because Bethany and I both get to travel quite a bit. And I have it right here still. It's like the perfect one to just set at the side of your sewing machine. Perfect to travel with, perfect to take in the camper, perfect for all of those things. That fits on the tray table,
trips, planes, trains,
so
automobiles,
all of that stuff. Taking it on my cruise, all those things. So, the mini with the mini tote is the special for today, which is 10% off on the website, but you can add that 15% off, which makes it almost 25% off, which is fantastic.
I did drop a link in the chat directly to that landing page I was just showing of our Christmas and July promo. So you can save that to your browser. If you're like me, just don't close the browser. I just leave all the tabs open. And that way you can look at it every day and see what the deal is. You'll know as soon as you look on our website every day, you'll know before we ever go live. And we're going live at different times throughout the week. It's not the same time every day.
Right.
Part of that is scheduling around things that we already have going on.
Right.
And also us kind of trying out different times of the day to go live, just in case, like, if we find out, like, hey, people really prefer we go live first thing in the morning. Cool.
Right.
Instead of later in the afternoon or instead of at lunchtime. Like, we're kind of playing around with that to see.
Yeah. Let us know, guys. Let us know when it's good for you guys. Like, we want to hear from you. We'd love to hear from you in the chat every time we go live. Hello, everybody joining us. Thank you for joining us. You can also join our Caterpillar Creations Hub Facebook group. We love feedback there as well. I was
about to post that up here. Hold on, let me find.
Yeah, with all of our things to post. If you go to Facebook and you just search Caterpillar Creations Hub, the group will pop up. It's a private group, but you can find it publicly and just request to join, and Bethany will approve you to join. We have a lot of fun in there. We have been really enjoying those of you that have been showing your progress on your sew-alongs. That's so great. We're so excited about all of that.
I know. I posted a picture last week after I finished the quilt top with all the from the sew-along. I posted a picture of my son holding it up because he's 6'2". And he could hold it up. I mean, he didn't have his arms stretched out, obviously, because he's so tall, but he held it up above his head and it came right down in front of his toes. And I was like, you're the perfect height for this table runner. And I think
that's his new job.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
I think you should keep him around for that.
Holder.
Yes, he can be a quilt holder. I have my son is 6'4".
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's super tall.
Boys.
Super tall. And so I was going to ask him to do the exact same thing after you told me what you did. But when I finished my quilt top and I held it up, while I was working on it, I was telling Bethany just before we went live, it is shorter than it was originally intended because I've been sewing at the wrong size. But I did it for all of them. So
consistency is key with quilting. And if you didn't do a 1/4 inch seam allowance and you did more of a 3/8 inch seam allowance like Melody did, that's okay. You just have to consistently do the same seam allowance so that because at the end of the day, all of your blocks ended up being 9 inches instead of 9.5.
Right.
But they were all the same.
They're all the same. Well, give or take. Anyway, they're all the same. They're all about 9 inches. And so when I was sewing them together and I had the middle pieces that I was sewing on, I was like, why are these so long? Like, what's going on? But it all worked out. And I got it done. I did it, guys. I finished it.
And so that's why when Melody and I first started the live today, if you weren't on yet, she was like online shopping because I sent her a couple of 1/4 inch piecing feet that she could get for her machine because her machine didn't come with one. And I was like, okay, well, this is how we prevent that seam allowance from being off when quilting in the future. You can use other feet, but the 1/4 inch piecing foot makes it a lot easier to be consistent with that seam allowance. So,
well, and now it makes sense. That other project that I had started that I showed you photos of, none of those blocks were coming out the size that they were telling me that they were supposed to come out. And now I know why, because I've been sewing at the 3/8 instead of the 1/4. Yeah. So it's okay.
It's fine.
I'll just have a different size thing. It's fine.
But you know what? At the end of the day, It's all about completion, not perfection. And you
Yes.
learned something.
Yes. Yes.
You learned a lot.
I've learned a lot.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Joyce said if I didn't want to trim down, hold on one second. Joyce said if I didn't want to trim down the 5-inch to 4.5, what size would my little flower? Joyce, I don't know off the top of my head. That would require some math because it would also change the size of your pieces in between. And going across this way, not just the block in the middle. It would be something where you probably need to I would visually need to sketch it out. So my guess is if you're not taking off that 1/2 inch, you're going to need to add a 1/2 inch to everything else. So instead of a 1.5 inch square, you're going to do 2-inch squares instead of, like all of that's going to change. All your pieces are going to go up at least a 1/2 inch. But honestly, it doesn't take that long to trim them down from 5 to 4.5. Like I did 2 at a time and it really didn't take but like 10 minutes. So
yeah, it went pretty quick. I cheated and I did like 4, 5 at a time. Some of them weren't exactly straight.
Sorry about the static. We're having a little static today and we're not sure why.
Yeah, it's me, I guess, because she can hear it, but I can't. So I apologize. My earpieces keeps cutting in and out as well. But yeah, it went pretty quick, but I do recommend doing 2 at a time. But I don't know, maybe make a block with a 1.5 inch and see how it comes out. I don't know.
I mean, one option is to take scrap fabric, cut a 5-inch square, and then cut the other pieces, adding a 1/2 inch, and lay them all together and see if they line up.
Yeah.
And do a little test block with some test scrap fabric first.
Yeah.
And you can write right on the fabric what your measurements are, or write on a piece of paper what your measurements are and what you added to it, or if you need to add more. Like to me, that before I cut into my good fabric, especially with a kit when you can't just easily go get more, like that's what I would do.
Yeah, I like that.
Because right off the top of my head, math is not my friend. And I don't want to tell you the wrong thing.
Listen, Joyce, I am so with you. When we first got the kits and I started prepping mine, I'm like, why can't they just stay? Like, why do we have
how much bigger, like instead of 9.5 inch blocks, it'd be like 10-inch blocks. Okay. So like this would be an even big, it wouldn't be a table runner at that point. And honestly, if you wanted to make this pattern and it didn't have a kit, you'd probably just get yardage or fat quarters and cut them all down yourself anyways. Right. So trimming a 5-inch block is actually a lot easier than cutting, how many was it? 84 4.5 inch squares individually.
Out of fabric, yeah.
Yeah. And so trimming, but the reason they gave you those charm packs, they are always 5-inch charm packs. And the reason they gave you those is because it's easier for them to give you all those pieces that way in a kit form than a bunch of yardage. So that it makes sense. So I didn't mind it. It's fine. It's fine.
It's all fine.
I want to show you guys a couple of things before we dive in. Okay. And then I'm going to explain to you how we're going to tackle today. And then we're going to have fun. Okay.
We're ready.
All right. So
I'm going to bow out here.
Okay.
You go to it, girl.
All right. Well, Melody, pop in if you have questions. Or actually, Melody, let's just do it like this. Do you want to be on? Like, we could go like this.
Okay.
So you can have questions. So, okay. Because then they can still see. So this is my quilt top, but I've already put it into a quilt sandwich, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But I just wanted to hold it up and show you what it looks like once it's all quilt. I am just slinging stuff, but what it looks like once it's all like in a quilt sandwich. And you see I've got some extra. I got my backing on the back. I used a really light backing. And this is my quilt sandwich. And I want to point out that this is what the pattern looks like, where these petals come to that point. Now, remember on Thursday, and I don't know who it was, that they said, hey, I put my little squares in these corners on the wrong order. Like I didn't do the whites on either side of the teal. I messed up and I ended up putting one here. Is that okay? What do I do? And I said, it would probably be really cute, like instead of coming to a point, more of like a rounded shape, right? And so it's okay to have that. You just need to be consistent, do it with all of them, right? So that your blocks still line up. And so then when I decided to quilt the second kit, because my goal, and we'll talk about this in a second, but my goal was to get this one completed before today and then demonstrate on this one. So I sewed up this one and I added that extra square because they gave us enough extra of this light fabric to cut some extra 1.5 inch squares. And I added an extra square to all of my flower petals. And this is what that looks like. So this one, instead of coming to a point on all the petals here, it has that extra little piece. So now they look a little more rounded. And it's just the subtlest little difference between the two. And I think it's super cute. And so this is where you can say, hey, I've got a little extra fabric. I could try this. And so whoever did that before and was like, I made a mistake. I don't think this was a mistake. I did it on purpose. And I was like, well, that's darling. So it just takes a little time. Whoop, Melody. It takes a little extra time to cut out a few extra squares and stitch on, you're going to put a square on all 4 corners instead of just 3. And yeah, it worked out great. So I just wanted to show you the subtle difference that one little piece added can make. I'm going to hold this one back up. This one's a little heavier because it's already put in its quilt sandwich form. But here's the one with the points. And here's the one with the round petals. I call them round because they look a little more circular. It's just little things like that. And this is where, as you learn to quilt more and find that kind of confidence in it, that you can go, hey, like I can tweak this. It'll still work out. And I had extra fabric and I think it turned out really cute. And so now they're not identical, but I just want to show, I still have to add the borders to this one and then quilt it as well. But I just wanted to show you that real quick. And if you want to see it again later, I can pull it up. But I did get this one that we started with the pointed petals into its quilt sandwich. Now, I am going to be fully transparent. My goal was to have this one already quilted, mostly bound, and ready to show you how to do binding on this one. I did not feel well over this weekend. I suffer from chronic migraines really badly. So I was down for the weekend and I did not get this done, unfortunately. So I have a different method of how I'm going to show you what I wanted to show you today so that you'll be prepared to finish your quilt top. And once mine is done, I will post it over in the Facebook group, the Caterpillar Creations Hub. But I'm just asking for your forgiveness and grace. I just could not get it done this weekend. I was just down and out. So I'm so sorry, but you will get all the knowledge you need today from today's live. And then if you do have any questions, hop over in that Facebook group and post them there. And I always respond to them as soon as I see them, or you can tag me in it and let me know to make sure that I see it and I can answer any questions or just cheer you on or celebrate your wins. People have been sharing their blocks over there as soon as they finish their first one, which I love. So, we love seeing all of that, and I'm happy to help you there. But just please know, I had planned to get this one completed, and that just unfortunately didn't. Life happens, okay?
Life always happens. It's fine. Life happens.
Yeah. So unfortunately, that didn't happen. But we are going to talk about quilt sandwich. So I did get it put into a quilt sandwich today, and then I have some smaller samples to show you easily on camera how to quilt this, because this would be hard to show you on camera anyways. Okay, so quilt sandwich. A quilt sandwich is what? It's 3 layers of material. You've got your quilt top, which we piece together. It's the focal point. You've got batting, which is that soft, fuzzy layer that gives it a little cushion and makes it cozy. And then you've got a backing fabric. And the backing fabric can match or it doesn't have to match. Like mine doesn't match perfectly. It's like a lighter color floral. I didn't have my quilt top with me or any scraps with me to color match. I just picked something at the store. So I just kind of trusted my gut. But it's on the back. But it blends in. It's fine. I'm not obviously putting neon colors or black on the back, but you totally could. And I find that backings, honestly, this is a great time to use up fabric that's laying around. I've seen people use old bed sheets for backing of quilts, especially really big quilts. So do whatever you want. It's your quilt. So I know this is going to go on my bed as like a bed runner because my kitchen table is not big enough for this. So this is fine. This works for me. Nobody's going to see the other side. Okay. So what I did is I, first of all, pressed both my quilt top and my backing fabric. I took it to my big iron. I did use my magic spray starch. And today I do have some products that I want to show you that I've used to make my quilting process easier. And I'm going to share some links as we go. So I'll share this one in a second. Give me just a second. But this is the spray starch that I've been using for this whole project, and it really has helped keep my blocks true to size and easy to trim down and come together really nice and help my points line up pretty well. Like I said, we're striving for completion, not perfection. And so I ironed my quilt top really well with some spray starch, got it nice and crispy, and all the wrinkles out. And I did the same for the backing. I lay my backing. I do it on the floor. Some people can do it on a big table. You can do it on a dining room table, cutting table. I had too much stuff on my cutting table today and I didn't want to move it. So I just moved my coffee table out of the way in the living room and I laid it out on the floor. So I put my backing fabric right side down onto my rug on my floor, and the wrong side is facing up. And then my batting I put on top of that, and then my quilt top I put on top of that. Now here's the deal. My quilt top, I know how big this is roughly because I know what the finished size of my quilt top is going to be based on the instructions. So rule of thumb is to have around 4 inches of extra material, batting and backing, beyond your quilt top. You don't want it to line up edge to edge before you quilt it because things shift and move. So you want to have a little wiggle room. Now I have a little bit more than that because this one I plan on quilting with my embroidery machine. So I need a little more room because I'm going to hoop it and we'll talk about that later. But if you're just going to free motion quilt this or straight line quilt it, which we'll talk about, you want to have extra batting and backing. And your backing can be bigger than your batting. It really doesn't matter, but they both need to be bigger than your quilt top. Now, another extra step, and let me back up real quick. So I've got all my layers on the floor, right? They're in their sandwich position, but we need to secure them together. And there's a few different ways to do that, okay? Let me move this real quick, okay? There's a few different ways. It's personal preference. So I'm going to give you a couple of ways. My preferred way, because I don't have enough patience, is temporary spray adhesive. This is for fabric. This is the ODIF 505. I'm going to put, have a link to it. So let me share a quick link for it. If you want to get this, you can. I find that it doesn't have much of an odor. And so that's why I like this one. And I'm just going to put this in here as 505 basting spray. Now what I'm sharing, these are just, I order this off Amazon. This is a small can. This is a 7-ounce can, but it comes in a bigger one. I think I linked the bigger one. 14-ounce can.
I got the big one.
Yeah. My big one's coming today, so I had to run to the store and grab this one. But this little one that I use, it's like half the size. It's almost empty. Like, it's not almost empty. It's probably like got 2/3 empty just from basting this one quilt sandwich together. But what this is you're going to lay all your layers out. And then what I typically do is I put my backing down and my batting down, and then I don't add my quilt top yet. I'll pull the backing back like halfway and I'll spray, and then I'll lay it out and smooth it out. And then I'll pull it back a little more. And I just do it like 12 inches at a time, like a foot at a time. You can do less, you can do more, but I wouldn't do too much more than that, just a little at a time, and work it from the center out. I like to baste from the center out. And so that's how I'm securing my batting to my backing. Okay. Now, once I've got those secured, I'm like, okay, cool. Now I can like put my quilt top on top of the batting. So on this side, and I can do the same method, but I always try to center my quilt top in the middle. So I have enough border all the way around with batting and backing. And then I do the same spray based method. and that's a great option. Another option, if you don't want to use spray adhesives or you're sensitive to aerosols, totally get that. It's not for everybody. I will say it will, I had to scrub my nails to get it all off. It's a sticky mess. But it does kind of, after you quilt and bind your quilt, you wash it, and all of it goes away. So you're fine. Another option is what's called quilting pins. I think I showed these on Thursday. They're just safety pins, but do you see how they've got a bend in them? Okay. I don't know if that's going to focus or not with the shine and all my studio lights, but it's got a bend in it, and that helps you be able to secure it. And this is an option to secure all 3 layers of your quilt sandwich without having to use a basting spray. There's even people who use both. And actually, my mom is one of those. She'll use a basting spray, especially if it's a bigger quilt that she knows she's not going to quilt right away, but she wants to go ahead and make the quilt sandwich. She'll do the basting, and then she'll come in and do the quilting pins. Now there's different rules here. I think with basting spray, you can probably do one every, 6 to 8 inches or so of these pins. But if you're not using any basting spray, and I would have one every like 3 to 4 inches. I mean, you're going to need quite a bit of them. So I actually am going to share the ones that I use, just so you have a quick link to them. I'm just trying to help you guys out to be set up for success if you want to use these. I wouldn't recommend straight pins. Straight pins are not going to be very secure. They're not going to stay in place, and they can poke you and be cumbersome and just pop out and not be very secure. So that's why we have these quilting pins, these safety pins. Now I'm not putting these in here because like I said, I plan to embroider quilt this, and I don't want pins in my embroidery hoop. So I'm going to do that later anyways. Okay. What else? So once you get it basted or pinned together, you now have a quilt sandwich. Now, if you're going to be like me, be a little extra, and you have an embroidery machine and you want to quilt it with your embroidery machine, there's one other thing that you might want to consider. I highly recommend. It's called embroidery paper tape. And I don't know if I have a link for this, but I can find it. But this is what it looks like masking tape, but it's a little bit lighter. It's not going to gunk up your needle, but it holds down your quilt top really well because it's hard to baste all the way to the edge of the material without getting it sticky out here. So I baste close to the edge, and then I use the seam tape. So it's okay if I stitch through this and then it just peels off. And because what you want to do when you quilt with your embroidery is you're quilting edge to edge. So you usually start a little off the edge, and that way it doesn't catch it and like get a mess up. So seam tape for paper tape for embroidery is very helpful, and that's why I've taped mine off. That is optional, but that's why I've got that. And I just wanted you to know, if you saw it, what that was. It's for when I do embroidery hooping. Okay. Any questions so far about making a quilt sandwich? Because that is how you're going to get set up for success. You want to press your material first. You don't need to press your batting, but you need to press your backing. You need to press your quilt top really well. And then you want to either spray based or pin with safety pins, the quilting pins, to secure your layers together. Okay, now you've got a quilt sandwich, and we're ready to decide how we want to quilt it. And there's a lot of options. Okay, have you ever used powder glue? Joyce, I have not. And like I said, there's a lot of different ways to do this. This is what I've done many times and my preferred method. There are so many different ways. I probably should have prefaced this video by saying everything I'm going to show you today, there's probably 5 to 10 other ways to do it. And that doesn't make my way wrong or their way wrong. There's all different ways that can be right, and you just have to figure out what works for you. So I'm going to give you some options that I would recommend maybe to beginners to figure out and get started. And then as you learn new ways, right? So powder glue is something I have not tried. Louise, I'm so glad you're here. We are just getting started. We just talked about making a quilt sandwich, so you're fine. You're good to go, but you may want to watch the replay to catch that little bit if you need it. But what we talked about was how to make the quilt sandwich. So now we've got our quilt sandwich made, okay? And it will add some weight to your project for sure. and we're going to talk about quilting. So let me fold this up so my basting doesn't come apart. It shouldn't, because it is pretty secure. All right, it's just big. Now there's a lot of different ways to quilt a quilt, and we've talked about that a little bit. And like I said, I'm going to do mine on my embroidery machine, which we're not going to dive into today. That's a whole nother topic, and there's tons of videos out there about it. But what I want to focus on is some beginner-friendly quilting techniques that you can try that are easy to do on a regular sewing machine, and all you need is a straight stitch. And that's what we're going to tackle today. Now, I always tell people, if you aren't sure how you want to quilt something, there's a couple ways that you can test this out. I recommend straight line quilting when you're a beginner. So if this is your first quilt project, highly recommend straight line quilting. But there's a couple ways that you can do that. You can do crosshatch at a diagonal, and I'll show you how to map that out. You can do straight line up and down, back and forth. You can do different widths. You don't need a lot of quilting to secure it together. Okay, this isn't like a big quilt that has that's going to be a lap blanket or on your bed or anything. This is like on a table runner, right? So some people do a ton of quilting on their quilts, and it's beautiful, and it adds a lot of fun texture and that kind of crinkle effect after you wash it. But it is not necessary to make the quilt stay together. You know what I mean? You just need some straight line stitching along the way. So let's talk about that. Okay. Thank goodness I have all these fun project samples from the years so I can show you these since I didn't get that big quilt done. So this is a quilt sandwich. It's a mini version. It's just 4 pieces I sewed together with some batting and backing. And I can see all my layers, okay? This is a crosshatch. Now you can see my pin marks because I'm going to show you how to mark them, but this is just a straight line, okay? So basically what you're going to do, let me find my ruler. You're going to take a ruler, and I like to use a friction pin, but you can use a fabric pin. You can use whatever you want. There's also these fun tools right here. This is a point turner because it can turn your points out, but this side right here kind of comes to a point, like an edge. It almost kind of feels, I don't know exactly what they call it. I've heard it be called a few different things, but I'll link it for you. It's what I use both ends of this. This is probably one of the tools I reach for the most, to turn points out, to push out my seams and things like that. But this side I use to mark quilt lines. Okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Is this working? Are we better? Okay, Christy says yes. I'm hoping that's correct. Sorry, my other microphone died. And if this one dies on me, please just holler at me and let me know. Thank goodness I have a set of 2.
We can hear you. Hold on.
I can hear you, Melody.
Oh, okay. Yeah, my earpiece died. My battery
and my
died.
microphone died.
And so I couldn't hear you for a minute, but now I can. I have new batteries, so I'm good. Yes.
Okay. Well, we're all dying over here.
We've done a lot of lives lately, and
it didn't get plugged back in.
It didn't all get plugged back in correctly, so that's okay.
I ended Thursday's live with a migraine. I had a migraine Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I finally came back to life yesterday, and I walked in here and nothing had changed since live on Thursday, so I'm sorry. Yeah. And if this one dies, I have like 2 other microphones, so we're fine. We'll be fine. But thank you for letting me know. I'm so sorry. So I'm going to backtrack. This is some people call it Hero marker. Let me switch my cameras real quick. I'm going to link this real quick. So give me just 1 second, because like I said, this is one of those tools that I use for so many different things, not just quilting, but I love it. And I want you guys to be able to grab one if you need it. Like I said, I'm just sharing some links to Amazon for these extra little things. Let's see here. On the way that they sell it, it's called a point turner, but this other, I'm knocking stuff over, but this other end can be used as a marker. So what I was doing is I was lining up my ruler corner to corner and making sure my ruler crossed right through that center mark. And I'm just running this and pressing into my material. And because I have 3 layers of material, I'm getting a crease here. And it's subtle. And yes, there's already stitches here, but it's a subtle crease that I'm getting. And then I can use that as my stitch guide to go. So what you can do is mark all of your creases, all of your lines, and you can decide how far apart you want them. So like on this one, because it's just 4 squares, and I wanted it to just have an X through the center of my squares, then I just kind of went, corner to corner again. And you can mark this one. And it leaves a crease. And then I would just turn it and go back the other way. So I would start, and I always start in the center and work my way out to mark everything, just so I don't get off. So when you're planning your quilting and you want to do a crosshatch, this is a great way to do it. And you don't need a ton of like quilting. Like this won't take very long. Now, if you want to get fancy, you could kind of split the difference and go, okay, well, this is 3 inches apart. So I could do another one right through here that's 1.5 inches. So it's like between the 2. Okay. So if I want it to be more quilted, I absolutely can. But that's totally up to you, however you want to mark it. You can mark it with that Hero marker, that point turner that I linked, or you can use a friction pen. Friction pens are fun because they go away with heat. Well, it helps if it writes. Maybe this one's out. I use these so much. Yep, I think that one's out. Let me grab another one. I've always got a few handy. There we go. So there's my line. I would stitch on that. And then if my iron was on, I would show you, I would just press it and it goes away. Now I will say I only use the black ones. I don't use any of the colored ones, so I don't get any residual thing hidden behind, my stitches. Some people like these. It's up to you, but I always recommend before you use it to test it on your fabric to make sure it's not going to leave any marks. Okay. There's also washable pens and markers and stuff too. So you have options for marking straight line quilting. And I love a diagonal crosshatch. And I'm going to show you a different table runner that I did recently with a crosshatch with that diagonal stitch. I like it because I really wanted the fabric to be the focal, not a busy quilting design. And it cuts right through. Now, instead of cutting corner to corner this way like an X, mine cut through the center like a box. Okay, let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more for you so you can see. And I use a white or cream thread typically, or even a light gray, because I like it when it kind of just blends in and it adds a little texture. So you can kind of see it here on the whiter fabric, and then it kind of gets lost. So I like something subtle, but if you like something bold, you could do a lot more lines. And let me show you what that might look like, because I have another one that I did with straight lines instead of crosshatch. And I did them a little closer together, and I did them in one direction. And it gives a whole new look to the quilt. So this is another option as well, is to just do straight lines and do them however far apart you want. You can measure how far apart and have them line up. But then there's also a really fun method, and I actually saw a friend do this on a king size quilt, because getting a straight line even all the way across in a big quilt like that can be really hard. They can get a little wonky. But there's a fun way where you can do straight line stitching, but do them like different measurements apart. So some can be kind of closer together, and then a little bit more of a gap, and then close together, and then like, you can kind of change it up. So it doesn't have to be so perfect. But when you're doing a smaller quilt like this, it's a little easier to keep it consistent. And this one I just did on this machine last year. I'll hold it up. It's just like a quilt that you put over the back of a couch or up on a wall. But it's just straight line quilted. And this was just a panel, so I did no piecing whatsoever. This couldn't have been an easier project. So this is a fun way to practice quilting techniques without spending a lot of time piecing a quilt top, is just getting fun panels like this. And then it also looks really nice on the back as well with the quilting. So I just wanted to show you that you can straight line quilt. You can do that up and down. I could have gone back and like gone across the other way too and have tiny little squares. I could have cross hatched. Those are the two that I kind of default to the most, especially for beginners. These types of crosshatch or straight line, like a checker kind of thing, all of that is great for other types of projects too. So if you wanted to make a quilted box bag, or if you wanted to make a quilted tote or something like that, like these are kind of the types of quilting that most people are doing for those. So these are very, very beginner friendly. Now, Mary just asked, how about stitch in the ditch? You're getting ahead of me, Mary, but yes, you can. So let's pull that one up. And I don't know if I have a stitch in the ditch foot with me, but I'll look real quick and see. So what is stitch in the ditch? Stitch in the ditch means that you are going to quilt this, but the goal or the objective is to not see your stitching at all. You're going to hide it in the ditch, meaning in your seams between your pieces. So if you have a block like this and you want to stitch in the ditch, you absolutely could. Here's another one. I have not quilted this one yet. This is a little log cabin one. And I used pins on this one. It is not basted with glue. It's just pinned. But if I didn't want to see any quilting on this, then I could stitch in between my pieces. So I could follow these along and stitch in between. And you absolutely could do that if you wanted. It's totally up to you. You could just do it in one big square here. And then again, as you piece these blocks together, that's an option as well. So you don't have to do all of the seam lines, but you could just do a couple and hide your stitches in here. Now there is a foot, and I'm going to look. Let's see if I have it in my machine. I don't know. I have so many feet. And I feel like I used it recently, but well, I'm going to show you this one for sure. And that one. Here we go.
So, hey, Bethany, if you were to stitch in the ditch on our Pretty Petals runner that we've got going on here, where exactly would you do it? Would you do it on all the little triangle corners as well, or maybe just around the squares?
I'll pull it out in just a second because I've thrown it over here on the floor. So let me show these feet real quick. Here is, and this is the one this is what it looks like on my machine. Yours might look a little different. Okay. But this is a 1/4 inch piecing foot, but it's got this guide in the middle, and that guide fits like it's your guide to stitch between the lines. So you put that guide on that seam and it'll kind of split the seam and you'll stitch right into that ditch. Okay. So it acts as a guide into that ditch. It's a stitch in the ditch. There's 1/4 inch ones. And then this one, I think is more of like a bi-level foot, but it will also do the same thing. So if yours looks a little more like this, that's fine as well. There we go. So there's options. A lot of them are going to be a stitch in the ditch foot that's a 1/4 inch. Sorry, my camera takes a second to focus. There we go. So a lot of them are going to be a 1/4 inch. It's going to have this like metal piece in the center. And that means that your needle is going to stitch right behind it. So that metal piece is going right in that seam. Here's a fun thing though. To make it even more invisible, you can use an invisible thread, like a clear thread, and that really hides it in there. Okay, so if you really do not want to see any quilting on the top, and this is commonly done with some busier ones, or if you've got applique or things like that, you really want to hide your quilting, but you still need to quilt all your layers together so they stay together. This is a fun way of doing that. We're going to talk about these feet with binding as well. And then, Melody, let's talk about what you were asking real quick. So let's look at this one. I'm just going to open up this one because it's easier than the one that's already into a quilt sandwich because it's so big. So on this block here, what you could do is stitch around each of these flowers petals, like around the petals if you want. Like you could just go around that. You could, honestly, you could stitch across here and here and here and here. Like you do not have to quilt over these pieces. You don't, that's, I mean, just going around these blocks in the ditch would be enough. Okay. You don't have to go around this one if you don't want to. You could cross hatch this way and this way if you want. It's totally up to you. You know, we've got these long pieces that go all the way across between our layer or rows, right? We have these long pieces. So you could stitch in the ditch all the way across there if you wanted. It is totally up to you. Okay. So that's an option. And I feel like this one would be pretty easy to stitch in the ditch with. Where's my little stitch in the ditch foot? So he's just going to like line up right into that ditch, that little metal piece. And that little metal piece creates a really nice kind of separation between those two pieces sewn together to put that stitch right in there. If you get a stitch on one side or the other, it's not the end of the world, but it is a nice way to hide your stitches if you don't want to do an all over quilt or if you don't want to cross hatch or straight line or anything like that. So I think stitch in the ditch would actually be really pretty on this because there's so many fun patterns going on. But yeah, you could totally stitch in the ditch. You could, and we're going to talk about some other types of quilting here that I think would be really fun on this, but it's a little more advanced. I wouldn't say it's beginner friendly, but I'm going to show you how, like, what it is so you can decide if you want to practice it. This right here is a foot that has a little ruler off to the side. So when I sewed up this one with all my straight lines, there's these fun little feet. It's called like a Sew Easy foot or a foot with guide. And this is adjustable. So you can like push it in further. You can push it out further. But what's cool is once you sew your first straight line, then you line up this with the line you just sewed. And as long as this is staying on the stitch that you just did, then the next one will be exactly like parallel to it and the same distance apart. And that's how I got this consistency all the way across. Okay, so this one is a little tricky to get used to, but it's so fun to use because the trick is you don't look at where you're stitching your needle, where you're going. You look at this and you use this as your guide. So it takes a little practice. Okay, learning to look somewhere other than where you're used to looking when you're sewing, and you just follow it along. And as it goes along, and then when you're done and you've stitched this row, then you move your fabric over and you line the guide up with this stitch that you just did, and then you keep going and you just work all the way across your quilt. And then once you're done going one direction, you could, and I didn't do this because I got tired of it, but you could, you know, make lines going this way. And you could adjust this width. And what I like to do is measure. There's like a little red line in the center. So I'll take a ruler and measure from there out. And it, like, I think these were like 1 inch apart. So then I would figure out, okay, where's the 1 inch mark? Okay, so that's where I want that guide. And actually, I think it was a little further out. And that was there's my 1 inch. And I would just go all the way across. So there are feet out there to make quilting easier, especially straight line quilting. So feel free to try that. Okay, so we talked about straight line quilting. You can do up and down, side to side, different stitch widths apart. You can do cross hatch, which is really fun. I do this a lot. I like that diagonal, especially if a lot of my blocks or designs are square. Like this table runner is just a charm pack, like those 5-inch squares that we used to make our petals. That's what this was in the center. And I decided to do diagonals to kind of break it up so it didn't look so blocky. And I really enjoyed that. So, and it was quick. This is a smaller, much smaller table runner than the kit. Okay, yeah. So we've got those. Now I want to show you something that I would consider more advanced. I will also preface this by saying I am by no means an expert on this. I'm still practicing, but I wanted to throw it out there. And I'm going to show you how I learned and how from my former boss at Singer, she sat me down. She goes, "You're gonna learn this." And I was so intimidated by this, but she made it so easy to learn that I thought I'd at least mention it here. I'm not going to go through a full demo because there's so many wonderful videos out there. But free motion quilting doesn't have to be scary, okay? Doesn't have to be scary. So I'm going to just show you a couple of things because I feel like the free motion quilting, even if you just wanted to do a little bit of it in the middle of these petals, after you stitch in the ditch, could be really fun. And I'm playing with the idea of doing that on one of mine because I have 2 of these. But I'm going to show you how she taught me because there's a lot of different types of free motion quilting techniques. And I may not remember the names of all of these, but I'm going to show you how she taught me. I'm going to talk you a little bit about how to set up your machine to try this if you want. Even if you don't want to do this on this project, this is a fun thing to play with and practice. And there's also a lot of templates out there. So if you didn't want to just kind of go in it willy-nilly like I did, and please don't judge me on these samples. These are ones that I first learned to do it on. So they're not great, but I'm being vulnerable and showing you. So okay. But these are the ones I did probably 4 years ago when I was sat down with her and she's like, "You can do this." So what she did is she made a quilt sandwich with some scrap fabric and she stitched a line down the center here and a line down the center here. And I have 4 quadrants. And we practiced 4 of the more common techniques for free motion quilting. Okay. Now, one of the ones that I like a lot is this kind of swirls. I know it's kind of hard to see. Let me see if I have kind of like this. Okay. See, I'm getting better. Okay. And this is just fun, play with it, that kind of thing. Then there's one, and it's okay if your stitches, like you make these little loops and they cross over each other. But then there's a method like this, more like stippling, and you don't want them to cross over each other. I feel like this one looks a lot like coral. And this one I kind of struggled with because I felt like I needed to know not only where I was going, but where I had been. Okay. So, I mean, I got better at it, but it didn't come as easy. And it does take, all of these take some practice. Okay. And then there's this one. And this one I would say was my hardest just because I'm not the best at straight lines. But this one is where you kind of like do straight lines one way, and then maybe you go the other way, and then you kind of go in a loop around here, but it's all square, straight lines and shapes. Okay. You could even, kind of go up and down, and that's fun, right? I don't know if I did much of that one on this sample, but then the last one, and this one takes a lot of time, but it's called pebbling. And it's just where you do a bunch of little circles in different sizes. And this is actually really fun to do if you're doing a quilt that has applique and it may have like a little pathway in the applique or stone, something that's supposed to look like stone. And you can do this kind of pebbling on a beach scene or something like that would be really fun. But Again, this would actually be really pretty in the center of some of these petals. I also think this kind of loop-de-loop would be really fun in the center of these petals. But the fun thing about free motion quilting is it's free motion. It's like drawing with stitches. And there's a lot of fun ways to practice it. So this is what I would recommend doing, is getting a quilt block, make your little quilt sandwich or whatever. It can just be solid piece of fabric like we did here. And making that stitch here and here and having 4 quadrants and just practicing and focusing on smaller sections, because focusing on smaller sections makes it a little easier to manage. I'm trying to see if there's any other ones. This one looks like trash, but I'm going to show it to you. You can do swirls, there's so many. It's just fun to practice and play, even with smaller pieces like this. And so that's what. Oh, here's another one. Here's another one of those quilt blocks that I did. So instead of doing that crosshatch on this one, I did a different design in each block. So you just practice and play. Now let's talk about real quick free motion quilting. There is some setup to your machine, but your machine can do it. You're going to want to do a couple of things. If you have a darning foot or embroidery, this is my embroidery foot. Let me change my camera again. It might look something like this or something similar to this. This is going to kind of bounce across the fabric as we're stitching. Okay. So it doesn't have teeth on the bottom, so it's not feeding the fabric through. We don't want to feed the fabric through. So speaking of teeth, you have what's called feed dog, as we call the teeth on your machine. It's what's under your foot, and you want to lower those. My machine has a button somewhere in the computer system to do that. Most machines, if you take off this whole accessory tray, back behind here, there's like a bar, goes one way or the other. And it'll have like where it's got little triangles that are below a line, and that's lowering your feed dog. And you'll see your feed dogs, your teeth, drop below your stitch plate. Okay. You want to do that for a few times when you're free motion quilting, when you're attaching a button. Those are the 2 times that I would say or you're tacking something and you don't want to move the fabric. Lowering your feed dog is going to prevent your fabric from feeding through your machine. Okay. It's just going to stitch in place. Nothing's going to move unless you move it. That's why with free motion quilting, you're the motion. Okay. You're the one moving the fabric different directions, and we don't want to fight against our feed dogs. So we're going to lower the feed dogs. We're going to attach some sort of darning foot or embroidery foot to our machine. And then you're going to put, I'm just going to take this foot off real quick. And then you're going to take your fabric, you're going to put it in here. And this is the trick that my teacher taught me, is she said, you're not spinning the fabric. You're just moving it like this is the horizon. Okay. So you're moving everything this way or up and down, left to right, but you're not rotating the fabric. Okay. So even when I did this swirl over here, I was just swirling around. I wasn't going like this. Okay. So that made a big difference to me, to think this is my horizon and I am just keeping everything aligned. Like this is staying aligned with my horizon. It's not rotating. And I hope that helps. I'm not going to go through a full demo of like all these different methods. Like I said, there's so many videos out there. I will say this does take practice. So I'm only sharing this with you because making a quilt sandwich, even a small little block or something like this, and just playing, this is where you get to know your machine. Okay. Especially if you're a new sewist or a new quilter, this is where you can there's no right or wrong way. Okay. There's a lot of ones out there. There's also some great templates that you can print off, and you can put the paper right on top and follow the paper. You could stitch right through the paper and use that as a guide. So that could be really fun. But please, if you have never done free motion quilting before, practice before you put it on a finished project. Okay. But have fun with it. I actually was so intimidated by it. And I'm going to tell you a funny story. I was sitting here doing this. My boss is sitting right here. Okay. She was the director of education for these huge sewing brands. And I'm like, oh my goodness, there's all this pressure. I was so nervous I was going to mess up. She's watching every single stitch. And then I get done and she goes, and breathe. And I was like, Oh, I didn't realize I was holding my breath. So if I can, you won't have anybody standing over your shoulder. You definitely won't have me standing over your shoulder. But as you're doing this and you're practicing and playing, like enjoy it and remember to breathe. It's really easy. Even I still will sometimes go and hold my breath because we're so focused and we don't want to mess up. And but you can stop and you can take a breath and just know like it doesn't have to be perfect. And we kind of focus on like, oh, that one's messed up. Oh, that one's messed up. But when you do a whole project, nobody's going to notice it. And my friend said this the other day. She actually read this quote to me and I don't remember who said it. It was in a book, but she said, if you can't see the mistake, whether it's your points lined up or your quilting is off or whatever, if you can't see the mistake from a galloping horse, nobody else is going to notice. So just remember that. It doesn't, we're looking at it like this while we're doing it up close. Nobody else is going to know. And it's all about completion, not perfection. Okay. Now, Jill just asked a great question. Do you ever use a walking foot? What is your preference about that? Melanie and I were just talking about walking foots before we went live, and I actually have it sitting right here. This is not the walking foot that works with this machine because my machine has a built-in walking foot. But for my other machines, I do have a walking foot. And if you are doing straight line quilting, whether it's crosshatch or a straight line, like up and down, diagonal, whatever it is, walking feet can be a huge plus, and I highly recommend it. So obviously this will not work with a stitch in the ditch foot. You'll need to use that foot to get stitches right into the ditches, stitches and ditches. But if you are just doing straight line quilting, or if you're doing like a diagonal, like this one, you can absolutely use a walking foot. If you're not going to use one of these other feet, like that has the guide and those kind of things, a walking foot can be really helpful. What a walking foot does, if you're not familiar, it kind of looks big and clunky, but it can be wonderful for so many different types of projects, not just quilting. This bar right here is going to go above the needle bar. Okay, I don't know if you can see this. Oh, did I switch to the wrong camera? I sure did. Hit the wrong button. All right. Oh, you can't see it. Okay, so here's my post. Okay. There is where the screw is for my needle. That is the needle bar. And this goes above the needle bar. Okay. And if you can see this, I know it's a little blurry. As I move this up and down, do you see this part of the foot moving up and down as well? Do they look like the feed dogs, those teeth that are built into our machine? That's because it's a second set of teeth. So these are called even feed or walking feet. And what it does is it basically aligns with the feet that are on your machine and the feet that are in this foot, and it's feeding your fabric through evenly from top and bottom. Because normally we just have the feet on the bottom that are built into our machine, and there's nothing really gripping the top of the fabric. So anytime you're sewing something thick or you're quilting something like this and you don't want shifting, this is also great for when we're using like slippery fabrics like satin or silks, or if you're using two different types of fabrics. So one time I was using denim and what was the other fabric? Oh, Sherpa, denim and Sherpa. Sherpa wants to stretch, my denim did not. And I was trying to make little doggy sleep sacks. Okay. Like I'm obsessed with my dog and she likes to burrow. So I made a little doggy sleeping bag and I lined it with a Sherpa. But to get it to not stretch and get off and have a big mess, I used a walking foot so that it was evenly feeding the denim on the bottom and evenly feeding the Sherpa on the top so that they stayed in alignment and nothing was getting stretched or messed up. So walking foot is your friend, especially if you're new to quilting. You're just going to do some straight lines and you're going to mark your material beforehand different ways. Use a walking foot. Highly, highly, highly recommend. I use a walking foot when I'm quilting anything like that I used foam. And I'll show you a quick example of something that I quilted that is foam. So instead of having batting in the middle of this, it's actually foam. So it's a lot more, will hold its shape. And I just quilted this with my walking foot and lined it, but it's got foam in here so it holds its shape and it's a fun little zipper box bag. Okay. So there's so many different ways that you can quilt, but a walking foot, especially for a beginner quilter, is going to be your best friend. Or if your machine has a built-in walking foot, definitely engage it. And it's going to help your material feed through evenly. It can sound a little louder and clunkier, but that's because this is all working together. And as your needle goes up and down, that's what makes this go up and down. So that's why you want to make sure that this is sitting on top of that needle bar. There are a ton of videos online to show you how to install these. Once you do it once, you'll be good to go. Okay, that was a great question. Thank you for asking about the walking foot. Which stitch length do you recommend for free motion? Jill, with free motion, you are the stitch length. I know that sounds scary, but you are. So as you are moving around and stitching, there's two variables: how fast you move your fabric, how fast you're pushing the foot control on the floor. Those two things is what determines your stitch length. There's no stitch regulator, okay? There's no stitch length. You just set it to a straight stitch. The stitch length doesn't matter because you are the stitch length. So if you move this through super fast and you're pushing the pedal really fast, then your stitches are going to be pretty long. So that's why I say practice, because we want to be consistent. And finding that groove between hand and foot with the foot control and the motion that you're moving your fabrics with your hand is what's going to help you find that consistency with consistent stitch length. So that's the variable. It's not just about the pattern and where you're going, but it's about having consistent stitch length as well. You don't want big gaps in stitches, because if you have long, really long stitches, then they can catch on things and snap and tear. So you're the stitch length. You're the stitch.
That is a very scary thought.
I know, but that's why we practice it. Now, when you are quilting without free motion, just straight line quilting, whether it's with your walking foot or with like a Sew Easy foot or a stitch in the ditch foot, one of the common questions I get a lot of times is, what's my stitch length when I quilt, just in general, like straight line quilting, what is my stitch length? That can be personal preference, but I always start at 3 millimeters. So we use the default stitch length for a straight stitch is 2.5 millimeters. And that's what we use for piecing our quilt top. When you start adding layers, we need to add length to our stitch so that it will feed through our machine easier. And it just looks really nice to have a little bit longer stitch length. I start at 3. Sometimes I go up to 3.5. It just kind of depends. If I'm doing a quilt top, like this one doesn't have a ton of piecing. And I know I say that and you're probably thinking, there's a lot of pieces. Yes, okay, there are. But I'm thinking like the foundation paper piecing, when there's a lot of little pieces and they all kind of come to a point and it can get pretty bulky. In those situations, I've gone up to a 4 or even a little higher, like to be able to get over that bulk. So you kind of have to base it off your quilt, but default typically is 3 to 3.5 straight stitch length. When I'm quilting straight line or diagonally or any of that. 1, you quilt faster the longer your stitch is. And 2, I like to see the stitch a little more, because that's the joy of quilting, right? To be able to see it. You've inspired me to practice free motion. Thanks, Jill. I'm so happy. Like I said, I'm not an expert, but I've always shared some tips of what my boss, how she taught me, and she helped me find my confidence in it. And I'm still playing with it, and I'm still not perfect at it. But I will say it can be a lot of fun. I would recommend starting with smaller pieces and then going up from there to something bigger. If you have an extension table for your machine that kind of comes off of it, highly recommend for free motion. That's really helpful. And there's also, like, they make gloves for free motion. And I know that sounds silly, but if you're doing a lot of it, you'll find that those gloves kind of help you grip your material so your hands don't slip on it, because you got nice soft material. Okay. So we've talked all about quilting. Melody, do you have any questions for me about quilting?
Can you quilt mine for me?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
If I didn't have 2 to quilt myself.
Yeah. No, I
want you to practice. Honestly, I think just doing some diagonal quilting on this would be really pretty to okay.
I'm torn on what to do.
As a beginner, I'm not going to tell you what to do, because it's up to you. Okay. And this is where practicing before you stitch makes a big difference.
Yeah.
But if you want to just do a diagonal, like going from corner to corner in a block and doing just one big X, Easy enough. Let me show you what I mean. Look, I got all these quilt projects on my table. Let me move some of them. I pulled all of these out of the bins today. We brought out all the props today. So what I'm saying here is, if you were like, okay, I've never quilted anything before, I'm so happy with this piece top and I don't want to mess it up. I worked so hard to make this piece. I get it. There's a lot of pressure to not mess it up. Going corner to corner in a block, just making a big X, is all you would need to do. If you wanted to take it a step further, you don't have to just stop in the block. You could continue that on. Let me see if I can move this up. You can continue that on all the way across. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so just line up your ruler, and you can either mark it with like a crease, mark it with a pen, you can mark it with a fabric marker. It's totally up to you how you want to mark your material. But once you've marked it, then you can just stitch, and you can cross right over. And if you cross right over, you're going to end up with like a cute little X right here in the center of these little marks. And you're just going to go all the way across. And it's going to secure it plenty. Okay. Sometimes less is more, right? Like I said, it's totally up to you. But you could go corner all the way down, corner, all the way down, all three. It's like 3 blocks in a row, right? And you would do this. What I would do is start in the center, and I would mark them and work my way out to one corner and then out to the other.
So you'd start in the center of the quilt.
Yeah. So, one of these center sections, I would mark here and go all the way across. And then I would just work my way all the way out to that top corner, just marking. And then I would do the same all the way down. And then I would turn it and I'd go the other way. So I'd have like long lines of X's all the way across. And you'll end up with a line through the center of each of your petals, just one line. And once you do that and you step back and look at it and you're like, I could do more. I think I'd like more. You could go in and add more. You could go into and then do like across there and have more of a 2 lines through each petal. Or you could do through the lines, the center line. So even like through these, okay, that the rows between the blocks and between the rows, these long pieces, you could do something through here. Now let me throw another curveball at you, Melody. So let's say you did straight line quilting and you did all of your lines through here and through here, and you did all of that through your petals, but you felt like this was kind of needing a little more. This is where you can play with decorative stitches. And I know some quilt people that have done a lot of quilts are going to be like, just hear me out. There are some beautiful decorative stitches on your machine if you have a computerized machine. And like I said, we're going to pick them. Like what I would do is get some fabric and play with different stitches on some plain fabric and then decide which one you like. But even just a fun vine that has little leaves between here, it's subtle, but you would literally go all the way across your quilt this way. You could go all the way down this way. And adding those little vines is like the stems and leaves for your flowers. It's telling the same story. It's going along with our floral theme. So
you're freaking me out.
No. Like this, okay.
Now you're going to tell me my machine can do that, right?
Oh, it can. It absolutely can. So what you would do first is your straight line quilting, okay? Like just the basics. But then if you decided that these center lines, okay, these that go all the way across here seem a little plain and boring, you want to add a little pizzazz, you can just do a straight line stitch down it. And if you want to draw a line through the middle to have a line to follow, you absolutely can. But like there's some beautiful decorative stitches and people don't entertain those very often, and they should more. Yeah. And it can be a lot of fun. And you're using the same thread. It's just adding a little, and honestly, from a distance, you probably wouldn't really notice it. But when you look up close, you're like, that's actually really nice. It's for you. It's for you. It's also a chance to play with your machine and try something new. Highly recommend incorporating decorative stitches into your quilting. It's kind of like using decorative stitches for applique, right? We do it for applique. Why can't we do it right here on just these kind of like more simple sections of our quilt that are not going to get caught in those crosshatch if you want to do that method. So just food for thought. I'm throwing all the ideas out there to you because there are so many. And like I said, there's more than what I'm sharing with you today. But for a beginner, straight line quilting, mark your lines with a ruler, creasing them, pins, markers, whatever you need. Just make sure it's fabric safe, and stitch and have fun. And it's so much fun. And honestly, once you get going, because once you get going, you put in like some music or podcast or an audiobook, or you turn on Netflix or whatever to listen to it, and you just start stitching.
So honestly, I have a question.
It's the repetition that makes you feel more comfortable with your machine, especially like yourself when you have a new machine. It's going to help you learn your machine. Like I have so many different machines, and every time I sit down at one and it starts to make a funny sound, I know instantly that something's not right because I'm in tune with my machine. And quilting is a great way to get in tune with your machine. What's your question?
Okay, so my Nikki that you know that I got, my new Nikki that I love, is this space here big enough for me to be able to quilt this whole thing?
Great question. So yes, but that's called the roll method. So you're going to have to roll it up as you go.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering about.
And that honestly, just taking the time to do that really helps. So when you go to quilt something, and I'm going to show with this smaller one, I was doing like diagonals. Okay. So on most of the time, you want most of your quilt away from you. But when you're starting in the center, you're kind of dividing it, and you're going to have that bulk here, and it's part of it. But what you're going to do is you're going to roll it and just roll it up. And I'm rolling this at a diagonal because I'm sewing at a diagonal. Okay. So if you roll it up, and your roll can be kind of close to where you're stitching, because you need to make sure that couple things. You're managing your material here in the neck of your machine. And mine has a pretty big neck. I have machines like yours that have smaller necks, and you just have to work with that space, and you just have to roll it up. The other thing you need to consider is what's behind you, because your quilt's going to fall off behind you. So making sure your space is clear. If you're sitting up against a wall, like your table is up against a wall and you're trying to quilt something, that might be the time to move your machine to the kitchen table, the dining room table, your cutting table, somewhere where your quilt has room to move, okay? Mm-hmm. Because if you're pushing this into something, it's going to push back.
Right.
Okay? And whenever that happens, you're going to get off. Okay? So whether you're free motion quilting, you're straight line quilting, make sure you have room for your whole piece to move around. Front of you, behind you, left and right. And so as you're doing this, and as it's in, and I knocked my other microphone off the table. But as you're doing this, you're going to have it in your lap too. Okay. So sitting back, having it in your lap, making sure you stop every so often and kind of giving it that slack. So there's nothing pulling on it. You're not rolling over it with your wheels. Been there, done that. It happens. Okay. Mm-hmm. But just make sure you take the time to prepare yourself to go across your quilt. So rolling it up. And when you're done and you're going to move over to the next one, roll it up again and then keep going. So it's fine. And then once you get to a certain point, you can just turn the whole quilt. Now your roll's over here and you have nothing in here, and then you're fine. And you've got an extension table on yours. So that helps elevate it too. Those extension tables give you more consistency in your stitching as well. Right. Because you've got more support for your bigger projects like quilts. That's why if you have a machine with an extension table and you're going to quilt, put it on. Okay, so good question. Lindell says, I like the idea of decorative stitches. Yes, have fun. Just because it's a quilt doesn't mean it has to just be a straight stitch. We can have fun. I kind of look at like the automation of long arming, like all of that, or even embroidery quilting. It's all decorative stitching. So why can't we do it with the stitches that are built into our machines? And I think it can be really fun. I've actually used decorative stitches on binding, and that leads me to binding. We're going to talk about binding real quick. What you're going to do is you're going to take your purple fabric that you have left. If you have not cut your binding strips, you're going to need to cut those. Oh, goodness. I'm dropping everything on the floor. So I'm getting ahead of myself. Once you're done quilting your whole quilt, okay, you've got your quilt sandwich. You've quilted this whole quilt. This is a mini version for camera's sake, and we've quilted it. We still have the extra beyond our quilt top. We have extra binding. We have extra batting. It's probably not square, okay? And that's fine because everything kind of stretches and moves as you quilt, and that's normal. What you're going to do is you're going to take your quilt top and you're going to put it, sometimes I like to give it a little press, but you don't have to. You can just put it on your cutting table, on your flip and fold cutting mat, lay it out flat. You can use a straight edge ruler. I like to use a little bit of a bigger one so I can do more at a time instead of a shorter one. You're going to line it up with the edge of your quilt top. So here's my quilt top. I'm going to line this up with the edge of my quilt top, not my batting, not my backing, my quilt top. And I'm going to do this all the way down all four sides of my quilt that I just quilted. And you're going to get this nice clean edge, and it's going to look so good. Look how crisp. And this is called squaring it up. So you may cut off a little bit here and there on your border if it's not square, kind of get stretched. But you want to square up your quilt. Okay, we want it. It's not going to be perfectly square. It's fabric. Okay, but you want to have a nice straight line, and you're going to do that on all four sides so that we can bind it. Okay, so I'm actually going to square this one up real quick. My rotary cutters have been through it this past week with all this quilting, which is so fun. I need to change out my blades. Okay.
Look how you're cutting over that seam on the flip and fold, and it's just fine.
You mean this seam that I can barely see?
Yep.
I don't even look for them. They're just, they're non-existent.
Yep.
I love it. I love it. By the way, the flip and folds are on sale if you didn't know that, right,
Christmas
Melody?
Christmas and July sale on the flip and folds.
So here is my quilt top. This is what yours will look like, but obviously much bigger. And we're ready to bind it. And there's a lot of different ways to bind material. And I was a little nervous about talking about binding because there are a lot of opinions about binding, just like there's a lot of opinions about how to quilt things. And you know what? To each their own, okay? There's so many fun ways to do it. And I'm going to show you a couple ways. So you're going to take, and this doesn't match, but we're just going to play with it. You're going to take your purple fabric that came in your kit, and you are going to come down here on your cutting page. If you haven't already done it, this last one right here, it says you need 6 strips that are 2.5 inches wide to the width of fabric. Remember, width of fabric is selvage to selvage. And so we would open this up, and here's one side of my selvage, here's the other. So my fabric's already selvage to selvage, and I just need to cut, you can leave it folded. I just need to cut 2.5 inch strips, and I need 6 of them. You've got plenty of fabric. Honestly, I feel like that's probably not long enough, but that's just me. You can cut more if you want. I'm going to show you how to piece these strips together and then how to make your binding. Okay. And I'm going to show you a couple ways, but you're going to take your 2.5 inch strips. I've got 2 pieces here of just some scrap fabric to show you. So there's a couple ways that you can create your binding. Personally, I like to go this route to get a diagonal that's going to give me a fold on the diagonal like this. Okay. That's just me personally. Some people, like we did our borders, when we sewed our border strips together, they will go like this and stitch and do it that way. So it's totally up to you how you prefer. And we're going to stitch. I'm going to just stitch them together like we did our borders to keep it simple. And I need a foot on my machine. Hello. I took it off and then I didn't put it back on.
Yeah.
I might need a foot. There we go. Just going to use my piecing foot. Your seam allowance can be 1/4 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch. It's totally up to you. You don't need a huge seam allowance for this because we're just going to, and you're going to piece all 6 of your strips together. These are right sides together. So they are right sides together. Let's see here. And now they're stitched together. And if you want, you can press this to one side or split this open. Totally up to you. Now, TV magic, we've got all 6 of our strips together. Yay, go us. Okay, this is where you'll notice in the instructions, they don't tell you how to do the binding. And the reason a lot of quilt patterns will tell you how to make the whole quilt top, but then they kind of stop there and say, quilt as you like, bind as your preferred method. That's because there's so many different ways and so many lovely opinions about it. So how I do it, and this is just me, okay? I like to keep it simple. And at the end of the day, I want the top of my quilt to look its best. Really don't care what the back looks like. Personally, don't come for me. But at the end of the day, I'm not making these for other people. It's for me, okay? And if I do make one for other people, they probably couldn't, don't know how to sew, so they don't even know the difference. So what I do is I fold my binding in half. And actually, I do need to plug in my iron real quick. Give me 1 second. Okay. And turn it on. But you're going to fold your strips in half. Wrong sides together, so the right sides are out. And you're going to press it and give it a nice little press. And you're going to do that all the way down, okay? And when my iron heats up, I'm going to do that. Now, if you've ever made a bag, I don't know if I did binding on the inside of this one. I did. Look at me. There is binding in these seams on the inside to hide the seams where I boxed this bag. This is a kind of bind. It's like a double fold. So just how I folded it in half like this to get a crease, and I creased it, and then I opened it up and I had this crease down the middle, and then I folded each side raw edge into the center to that crease, and I pressed that, and then I fold it again and I press it again. This is like an enclosed binding. So if you're doing like a bag or something like that, you would just kind of wrap both sides around your material, and you would just do one single stitch, and that would stitch the front and the back at the same time. I find this to be a really easy method for binding for any type of project. But for quilting, I'm going to show you a different way. But just know, like, you can use a double fold. You can get pre-bought binding as well and use a double fold binding. I use this method for the inside of like my quilt coats to hide the seams, all of that. But for this one, we're going to do something a little different. So while I press this real quick, is there any questions, Melody, about where we're at so far? We've talked about a lot. This has been an information overload lesson.
Yeah.
I know that. But that's because, like I said, there's so many different ways to do all these things. And I just want to inspire you to try something and figure out what meets your level of sewing and what your comfort is. But a lot of what I've shared today, other than free motion quilting, has been very beginner friendly. And you just have to decide what your comfort level is. But if you take nothing away from this, just know that just practice. Get some scrap fabric, make a little quilt sandwich, and practice and play. What's your question, Melody?
So when you do your binding and you do like the perpendicular method where you've got the thing at the angle, right?
Yes.
How close are you trimming off that?
You always want to leave a 1/4 inch seam allowance.
Okay. I'm going to try that right now.
So to do that, and I can show that here in a second. Little Biscuit over here. You can't see her today because my machine is so big, but she's just woke up from her nap.
Hi, Biscuit.
She's coming out of her cave, her bed, and her scruff is all messed up. Oh, there's her little shake. I don't know if you could hear her shake it off. All I'm doing right now is pressing my binding in half. There we go.
If we're doing the... Okay, never mind. I'm going to try it. I'm scared.
You've got this. I'm sorry I'm not there in person to hold your hand, but I am virtually holding your hand, and that's why we're doing this so long. I'm holding everybody's hand. And don't forget, we have our Caterpillar Creations Hub Facebook group. So if you ever get stuck, just post a picture, post a video, tag me in the post, Craft with Bethany, and I will see it, and I will comment as soon as I see it. I try to check it at least once a day, so be a little patient with me, but I'm happy to help, okay? Louise says she's never thought to use decorative stitches either. Y'all, I hope I've inspired you to try something new. Think outside the box. It's so fun. Jill, I like using that serpentine stitch in borders. Yes, super fun. I like a little blanket stitch sometimes. Those are fun. Okay, so we've got our binding folded in half. Okay, right sides out. And here's another personal preference. Okay, I know that if I want to control what the top of my quilt looks like with my binding, and I'm going to use this one as my example here. Let me pull it out. If I want my stitches to look really nice on the top, and I'm machine quilting. There are people who love to hand quilt. And if that's you, that's great.
My mom did, yeah.
I don't have the time or the patience. My mom likes to as well. But I also like to machine quilt, or I prefer machine binding. And I want this to look the nicest because this is what you're going to see. Okay. So for me, my preferred method is to put my binding on the back and then bring it to the front after I stitch it on, so I can get that perfect stitch across the front. Some people, and I think the common method of how it's typically taught is to start on the front and then bring it to the back. But what happens is, as you stitch it to the back, from the front even, you might not always catch both sides, and it's harder to see where you're going and where you've been, okay? So for me, and my kind of foolproof method, because like I said, I don't really care what the back looks like. I want to make sure that the front looks nice, because that's what I see, that's what other people are going to see. And anybody who's looking at the back of my quilts needs a new hobby. Okay, so I'm going to start on the back. And where you've got your fold, that's going to go into the quilt, and your raw edges, your two raw edges here, are going to go, where's my little remote to zoom in? There we go. The raw edges are going to go to the edge of your quilt, okay? This is where these clips come in super handy. So you're just going to clip this to the edge. Now, I do not start right at the edge of this. I leave a good gap, and I usually start at the bottom center of my quilt, because I'm okay with the seam being at the center bottom of my quilt, but you can put it wherever you want it. I just wouldn't put it in a corner, because we want to miter these corners, and I'm going to show you how my method for getting really nice mitered corners, okay? So we're going to talk about that, but this is where we're at right here. We have our binding strip coming off the end, and I'm going to stitch along here, and I'm not starting at the edge. I'm starting a few inches in, and I'm going to back stitch a little bit, just a 1 or 2 stitches, and I'm going to go all the way along, but I'm not going to go off the edge. I'm going to stop you at a certain point, okay? Now I'm still using my 1/4 inch piecing foot. You can use that. You can use a different foot. Why am I starting there? I just said don't start there. It's up to you. And also, since we're doing 2.5 inch wide binding, you can make it wider. Some people prefer a wider binding than 2.5 inches. It's totally up to you, but this pattern calls for 2.5. If you want to cut them 3 inches, you absolutely can. Like I said, it's personal preference. And I like to stitch a little closer to the back, so I do about 1/4 inch. Some people will do a little bit, that way it folds over more to the front. Again, personal preference. So I'm going to put my needle down. I'm going to do a couple back stitches just to secure it. And I'm going to stitch all the way along the edge. And when I get to the edge, before I get to the edge, okay, I know it's hard to see because my machine is bright. Let me actually turn the light down. Oh, now you can see. I'm so sorry. Oh, but my grid is on. Hold on one second. We don't need. Can you see the little grid stuff? You don't need that. Let me turn that off. Okay. So as I'm coming down, before I get to the edge, and you can see that the edge is here, and I'm not quite there yet, I want to stop about 1/4 of an inch away from the edge. It's the same distance I am from the side of my quilt, okay? I'm stopping 1/4 inch away. If you're not sure how far away that is, you can take a little ruler if you need to and kind of mark it. I really just need to go like maybe 3 more stitches. So not far. 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to stop with my needle in the down position, okay? If you have a needle up down button on your machine, this is a great time to engage it, okay? So I stopped with my needle in the down position. Now I'm going to rotate my material, my quilt, so that now my foot is pointed so that I am going to sew right off the corner. This is the corner of it, and I'm going to sew right off the corner and cut my threads, okay? So what I've done is I've stitched all the way along this edge, and then I've pivoted and just stitched right off the corner, 1/4 inch away. Now, and I'm going to show you over here because it's a little easier. And we're going to zoom in. Okay, so I stitched. Where am I? There we are. I stitched all the way across, and then I stopped 1/4 of an inch away from this corner right here. And then I pivoted and stitched right off the corner, okay? What you're going to do is bring your binding up and see how I did that like corner stitch? It kind of gives me that angle. So it's folded straight up, okay? So I'm going to go straight up and see, you know it's straight up because the edge of my quilt and the edge of my binding are in alignment, okay? It's going to go straight up. And then I'm going to bring my binding. I'm holding this down, by the way. And I'm going to fold this over and line up this binding here, down this side. And this has got a fold right here. I'm going to clip this and show you exactly what that will look like. You want this fold to be right at the edge, not over, right along the edge, lined up with the edge of your this edge of the quilt that you just sewed. And then this edge of your binding should line up perfectly with that edge of your quilt, okay? And that is how we're going to get that perfect mitered corner, okay? So I'm going to show it to you one more time because I know for people who've never done this before, it can be a little bit of a mind bender, but this is how I get really nice mitered corners every time. We've got stitched all the way down 1/4 inch away from this edge, this corner. I pivot and I stitched right off to the corner. I'm taking my binding and I'm folding it up so I get this angle. Okay, it actually lines up perfectly with my stitch line here. And then once I fold it up, I'm just going to hold that there and I'm going to fold it down and make sure that this fold is lined up with this top edge. Okay, and then this just lines up like this. And then I like to put a little clip here to hold that in place. And then we can clip down this side if you want. Well, that's the back side of the clip. This is what happens when I do things backwards. Trying to clip the wrong side of the clip. And you're just going to clip down this side here. And now we're going to start right at the edge here. Do a little back stitch and we're going to sew all the way down that edge, okay? So I'm going to come back over to my machine and I've got it lined up. Now, if you don't know this already, you never want to start stitching right off, especially when you've got bulk, okay? You never want to start right at the edge. See how my foot is angled up? It's going to be hard to get going. So we actually want to start in just a little bit so our foot's a little more level. We can go forward a couple stitches and then it's easier to back to the edge and then go back forward. That is going to prevent nesting underneath your machine, okay? You know what? I never lengthened my stitch. So for binding, I always lengthen my stitch at least to 3, maybe 3.5 when I rotate it over and do the top stitch. All right, so I'm going to keep going and I'm going to do the same method on all of these corners. I'm going to stop 1/4 of an inch away and stitch off the edge. And then I'm going to fold it up and fold it down, line up my folds, and keep going. I'm going to stitch all the way around so I can show you how there's a lot of different ways to finish it off, your binding, and I'm going to show you how to flip it over and get these really pretty mitered corners. Show you the magic part.
Magic.
Now, Melody, you haven't really told us much about your experience at the Backstreet Boys.
Well, I was going to tell everybody. I told Bethany a little bit yesterday, and I made her very sad.
No, you didn't.
And started to look for flights herself. And then I felt guilty about that. But I will tell everybody, I was in Vegas over the weekend with my daughter. We went to see the Backstreet Boys at the Sphere. They have a residency there right now. And it was one of the best concerts I've ever been to in my life. And I had so much fun. And it was such a beautiful show. I cried, I laughed, I cheered, I lost my voice. It was so great. If you have an opportunity or you like the Backstreet Boys, you don't have to love them like I do, but if you even like them, I am suggesting you go to this show if you can, because my gosh, it was so cool.
So cool.
It was so cool. It was way more than I had ever thought or expected it could have been. It was very, very cool.
I am envious, that's for sure. But yeah. I'm so glad that you got to go.
And I felt a little guilty because I was so excited after the show. I started texting Bethany photos and videos, and it was like 1 a.m. her time because I was in Vegas and she was in Tennessee.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a time difference, but that's okay.
There was a little bit of a time difference, but I just started like texting everybody, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this was so great!" So, but it was a beautiful, beautiful time and a beautiful show. My daughter and I had a great time together, and that was really the best part of it. So it was amazing.
I'm so glad you had fun. And yes. I have to tell you, I saw a video, I think it was earlier today, that said that if you like the Sphere has a lot of because of how big it is and all the lights and everything, that people who have never had like issues with like seizures or anything before, it can cause them if they've never, because they're so intense, like how big it is and everything.
Yeah.
And I thought about that and I was like, as someone who suffers with like horrible chronic migraines,
yeah, it was
not the place for me to go see a show.
It may not be, because I will tell you, I don't have those issues. Yeah, I don't have any problems with heights.
Who didn't even think they had those issues until
I got dizzy.
Yeah,
there were several times that I got so dizzy I had to like look away because I felt like I was flying. I felt like I was spinning. I felt like I was there. It was very cool. But yes, watch out for those kinds of things at the Sphere. But
and a doctor at the local hospital said that they get 5 to 7 cases of that every week that there's a show at the Sphere, because at their local hospital there, because people who don't have a history of those issues, it brings it out because it's so intense. So
yeah, I don't doubt that.
So if you already have a history of that kind of stuff, you probably shouldn't go to the Sphere. Okay, that's why I brought it up.
I think that's very wise. I think that's a good thing to be careful of.
And I didn't even think about it, but if you can't ride those rides at like the theme park that like has all the motion stuff, it's probably not for you.
That is very true. I agree with that completely. Because
I don't want you to go and be like, Melody told us to go.
Yeah, no. I'm not telling anybody to do that. But I don't like the spinny rides at the amusement parks, right?
I don't mind those.
I can handle the fast. I can handle the height. I can handle all of that, but I don't like the spinny. And so there were a couple of times, like I said, where I had to look away. So
look down, look away, sit down, take a break. Yeah.
But it was amazing. We saw the Backstreet Boys Saturday night. We also saw Kelly Clarkson Friday night.
Yeah. You made the most of your trip. I love it.
Also amazing. And then we flew home Sunday. So it was a really quick trip, but it was It was so much fun. And Kelly Clarkson was amazing as well. She's just phenomenal. So she was great to see. Totally different vibe. Hers was very chill. Not dizzy at all. Just a beautiful concert. But yeah, the Backstreet Boys was intense and it was wonderful.
Okay, I'm going to show you a method for finishing off your quilts. Is it the tried and true perfect way or your binding? No, it's probably not. And there's probably other ways to do it. There's a lot of other ways to do it. But as you know, I left a little tail here where I got started, and I've got my tail for where I finished, and I leave a little bit of a gap. And basically I kind of, this is going to be hard to show, and I'm going to do my very best. But like I said, there's other videos out there that probably can do it from a bunch of different angles that aren't live, and they can show you. So, and this tail is so long, so I'm actually going to trim off this extra just to make it a little easier for me to manage. Okay, so I got my two ends, and I want them to kind of meet in the middle and fit really well. And so I butt them up to each other. I'm going to cut a little more off this. All right, so I butt them up to each other wherever I want the seam to meet. Okay, so I'm like doing that, and I fold it to one side, and I've got this like line here, and I'll take, where's my little ruler? This one, oh, here we go, this one. And I'll take my ruler and kind of butt it right up against that fold where it's all folded over, and I'll draw a little line. And then I'm going to take these and kind of clip them together. And this is my way. Okay. Like I said, there are so many, please don't come for me. This is, okay. So they're butted up against each other. I fold it over to one side. I've got all this bulk here. So this is my line. This is my stitch line. Okay. This is my stitch line, and I've clipped them together so they don't come apart. And I'm going to pick it up, and I've got a little bit of a gap here. And that way I can lay it into my machine and stitch along that line, and then cut off this excess, and then it's going to lay back flat again. Okay. So I'm going to try to do this. I'm going to start over. I'm going to tell you why I'm going to start over. Hold on one second. Like my line went away because I just pressed it. You don't want your line to be close to where you're stitching. You want it to kind of be in the center of this opening. So let's find that. Okay, so there they are, butted up right next to each other. I'm going to butt them up next to each other right in the middle of that gap, and I'm going to fold them over. Okay, this isn't scientific. And I'm going to draw my line. I'm going to clip my little ends together. This is why I like to leave a bit of a tail at the beginning and the end. So I've got my line. They're all folded over. And now when I pick this up, it's this line. I've got this like gap here, right? And I can separate. You may want to leave a bigger gap. And it's going to be a little weird, but you're going to feed this into your machine, and you're going to bunch it up, but bunch up your quilt. But you're going to stitch across that, okay? So let me switch over to my machine. And you're not stitching on your quilt, you're just closing up your binding. My back stitch is still on. And you do want to back stitch on both ends, so there we go. So as you can see, I just stitched across that line. And I trim my little tails. And I'm just going to throw them on the floor like everybody else does. Now, before I trim this off, okay, before I trim anything off, I want to test it, because I can still pick it out if I need to, but I want to test it. So I'm going to open this back up and see how this just laid down super flat across there. So I know this is good. And so what I'm going to do is fold this back again and leave maybe 1/8 of an inch. I don't want a whole lot of bulk. Trim off the excess, and now it lays flat across there. Look at that. That's how I like to finish off my binding when I'm joining it. that is my preferred method because for me, it makes sense in my mind and it keeps it simple. But if you have another method, go for it. There's a lot of different methods, okay? There's methods where you open it up and stitch it and all this stuff. This is my preferred method. All right, so here's where the fun happens. Now that we've sewn it onto the back, we want to take our binding and fold it over to the front, okay? So you want to flip it over and start pulling it to the front all the way around. Okay, give it a nice little tug all the way around. Now, one thing I like to do is go to an iron. See how it's like rolling? Go to an iron and really press it. Okay, so I'm going to take a quick second to give it a little press all the way around the backside to press my binding like so I can wrap it to the front. And that way it's evenly all the way around. So let's press it away. Do as best you can in the corners, but really focus on those edges.
Bethany, I did all my binding together diagonally just now.
Yay. You want to show it off?
I will. I'm just pressing it open on the glass mat. But nice. The glass mat wasn't sitting next to me. It's on the other side of the table, so you can't see me right now, but I'll be back.
Do you have the sniffles?
Just my usual allergies I have, yeah.
I was like, you didn't catch a cold in Vegas, did you?
I mean, who knows? There's a lot of weird things in Vegas, but no, I always have allergies. I'm always allergic to something. So
I forgot that after you get it to lay flat, you do need to stitch back across that. Otherwise, you're going to have a hole. So I'm going to stitch my binding, close that hole. I noticed it when I went to like press it and I was like, wait a second, I got a gap.
Wait a second. There's a hole there.
Wait a second. Wait a second.
Okay, here we go. Are you ready? While you're stitching that, check this out.
Make sure you back stitch on both sides of closing that gap.
Look at that.
Look. So you can press your seams to one side or open them.
I did them open, but look, it's all
beautiful. Okay, so now you're going to fold them in half, fold that whole strip in half. And so fold it in half starting at one end and just kind of press as you go. And you're going to fold it in half, wrong sides together. You want the right sides out. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
I'm wondering if I dare use that cute little tool that I got during the Handmade Collective when I was watching Corey.
Yeah.
Because in our little kit that I got.
Yep. You could.
There's a little
binding tool.
Binding tool, right?
There is.
So I might try that when I take this home.
You absolutely could, because it like holds it in place and then you just slide it through and it makes it really simple. There's quite a few different binding tools out there. That's one of them. There's also like the clip ones, and I've used those before, and you can clip it to your ironing board and press them through. There's a lot. I just fold it. So
well, yeah, no, that, yeah.
But I was only doing 2 pieces and you've got like 6 pieces. So that would make sense. Okay. Yeah. So I've pressed it. So it's nice and pressed, and I've closed up my gap and I've got it to the front. So now it kind of looks like this, and we're going to fold this in and go around and clip it down. Now, there are a couple options. One of the things you might have gotten, Melody, is like glue-based, basting glue. So you can put a little bit of glue along here, or like use a glue stick and fold that over and clip it down. Now, you could really pull that tight and get a nice wide binding, but then you're going to have a narrow binding on the back, and that's fine. But when you go to stitch this, you're going to have a stitch line here and a stitch line like back into here, you know, right. So that's something to consider. But if you kind of want your stitches to line up, you can fold it so that it kind of just goes over where you can see, like this line of stitching is from where we sewed the binding onto the back. So you have a guide. And so if you want to do a deeper seam allowance, you can, but I did a 1/4 inch, and then I could fold this over and I can just put this edge just past that stitch line, because obviously I want to hide it. And I know I'm going to stitch just inside this edge. And then my stitches from here will catch on the back of here, or ideally fall into that ditch, which is really hard to do. So you can glue baste it. I like glue basting. to hold it in place, and then clip it if you want. You can glue baste it and press it, and that kind of seals it, and you don't have to clip it. It's personal preference. But for this small one, I'm just going to clip. I typically clip. I'm a big fan of clips. Now, remember those mitered corners we were talking about?
Yes.
I like to kind of do my edges and then work into my corners. Where's all my clips are under my keyboard over here. There we go. I got feet and clips under my keyboard. Presser feet and clips. Okay. We're almost done, guys. Thanks for hanging in there. Okay, so I'm going to show you real quick. I've got it clipped in, and it naturally kind of creates this point. And this is where we're going to get that really nice mitered corner. You're just going to kind of push it in, straight in on one side, and kind of just like do this little tuck, okay? And see how it just lays down and gives you this little point. And this little point right here should line up with this little point, and you just get this nice little, and I just.
So did it fold to one side kind of?
Folds to one side.
Nice.
So as we stitch, we'll stitch along here, we'll drop our needle in the corner, pivot our fabric, and keep going down, and we'll catch those corners. And so that's how I get these really nice corners, because how I stitched it, my binding on. It creates that nice little corner. So that's my way of getting, because I think a lot of people struggle with getting nice corners, and the corners do stand out on a quilt. And so that's just something to keep in mind. Now, if you get to a point where, and I know it's going to be hard to see, but there is some bulk right here in my binding, because that's where my seam is. You want to avoid having that bulk in the corner. So if you are getting to a point where your seam for your binding is going to fall into this corner, I would actually stop stitching and trim your binding and restitch it so your seam's like back here or even here. Don't let that seam fall into the corner, because then you're not going to get a nice crispy corner. And it's going to be so bulky to sew over when you do that corner fold.
That makes sense.
Man, my fabric choice today is a little heinous, isn't it? But I just grabbed what I had handy. Now, if you start to fold your corner and you're like, it's not lining up right, don't force it. Try folding, tucking the other side under first. Sometimes you just kind of have to play with it. So it will want to fall into place. There we go. And I got one more little corner over here. Make sure you trim your thread tails. And see, showing you on a smaller project helps us get through it a little faster than trying to do it on the big one. But it's the same method. You just have a little more stitching to do.
Right.
Okay. So now I've got everything down. I can start wherever I want. Like I said, I typically have this is square, so I got to find where my so this is where my binding joined at the bottom of my quilt. So we're calling this the bottom. I usually start my binding at the bottom center, and then my join is there, and then I usually start my top stitch there. And so I'll start usually around the bottom center. So when I do that tiny little back stitch, or if you want to pull your threads to the back and tie them off, you can do that as well. And that is how I like to do it. Now, let's see here. This is where you can decide how close to the edge you want to stitch on your binding. It's totally up to you. I like to get kind of close to the edge, but this is also a great opportunity to try decorative stitches. So if you are like, I'm not great at straight stitches, I'm worried my top stitch isn't going to look that great. What can I do that would kind of hide that? And decorative stitches on binding, don't sleep on it. It is so fun. And it can add a lot of really cool features. and I'm actually going to lengthen my stitch a little more. I'm still using my 1/4-inch piecing foot. Ideally, you'd want to use like a walking foot or something like that, but my machine has a built-in walking foot, so it really is okay. But a decorative stitch can be a lot of fun. I love a blanket stitch. A blanket stitch is kind of tacks into both it's a straight stitch that has these little tacks. So the straight stitch would go along in this ditch, and then it would just tack in. It's really pretty. Now I stopped in the corner, I left my needle down, and I did a little pivot, and I'm just gonna keep going. And I'm going kind of slow right here because I've got a little bit of bulk. And take my time. I don't want to rush it. Rushing is how we break needles.
Break your needle, yeah.
Once you've used an industrial, like I use some, Melody, I don't think you even know this. For a short stint during the pandemic, when I had been laid off from my job at the time, like most of the country, I needed something. And so I ended up getting a job at a local upholstery. It's like they make custom high-end draperies for like the fancy houses and the high-rise condos and all this stuff. So I was using these big industrial machines. And to do all of like the pleats and stuff for the blackout curtains, right. I had this big tack machine, and it was so scary. And I had a needle break because it like goes like it tacks through like so many layers of heavy material really fast, and it gets really hot, and after a few times you have to let it sit and cool off, and then like usually put in a new needle or whatever. Well, the needle broke. Thankfully I wear glasses, and it hit my face, like the point of the needle broke, and it hit my face like on my cheek right under my eye, and I'll never forget it. But this was also during the pandemic, right?
Right.
It was like me and like 2 other people that worked there. So like 2 of us sewed and 1 worked in the front office. And so it was a small place. And so I'm over there doing this, and it scared the living daylights out of me. And I mean, this is the pandemic, and this is back when like, you know, maybe 6 to 8 months into the pandemic, and they had come out with those like clear face shields, so you didn't have to have a mask over your nose.
Right.
And I was like, I went home, I got one, I brought it to work the next day, and I left it next to that machine. And I was like, this is a requirement to use this machine. You have to wear this face shield, because if I hadn't had my glasses on, I probably would have.
That was 2 birds, 1 stone there.
Yeah, it was so scary. So now every time I go over, like even on my domestic machines and stuff, anytime I'm going over bulky spots, I'm like, nice and slow. Take it easy.
Take it easy.
We're not in a hurry.
Not in a hurry. No big rush. Everything's fine.
So breaking a needle, like that kind of traumatized me a little bit.
It's traumatizing. I've done that in the past, but
all right. Let me trim some thread tails. This might be the ugliest quilt block there ever was, but it looks pretty from the back. The fabrics match. Okay. So from the back, when I stitched across the front, it caught on the back perfectly. See? And then here it is stitched from the front. And it's just, and then you've got these little corners, and they're all squared up, and it just looks, and it's that simple. So don't be intimidated by binding. It doesn't have to be scary. You guys can do this. Now I'm going to throw a curveball at you because that's what I do.
Of course you are, because that's what you do.
Because I want to teach you the basics, and I want you to start there. Obviously, that's the starting point. But the whole fun of sewing is there's so many different ways to do things that like we can challenge ourselves. I still challenge myself. Okay. Like I've been sewing for 35 years. So we can challenge ourselves. Now, we obviously don't have time today to go over flange binding. And I did mention this before that we would talk about it. So I'm going to talk about it and show you. And then I'm going to drop a link to a tutorial I have on my YouTube channel that will walk you through flange binding. But what is flange binding? Flange binding is where our binding has a little flange, this little extra piece, okay? It's a little decorative piece. It can be Sometimes people will incorporate special trims or even rickrack to get some fun design along the binding, and you can do that as well. But this is a flange binding. And basically, you're sewing your binding the same way we just did here, okay? But before you sew your binding on, you need to make the binding, and you incorporate this piece into your binding as one whole piece. So it's like you have two different pieces that you sew together to make the binding, and then as you sew it on back to front, just like we did on this one, then the only difference is of where you stitch. And I've got a thread there. The only difference is where you stitch. And this is where that fun little stitch in the ditch foot comes into play. And you put it in that ditch, that little metal piece that's in that middle of that foot, and it splits that ditch, and you stitch here. Now, here's what's really cool about this. If you use a thread that's clear, you do not see these stitches at all. I used a white thread, and I barely see these stitches. Like, I have to look for it. So if you prefer your binding to not have visible stitching, like traditional machine binding, like we just did, where you can see the stitches along here, if you prefer to not have that and you like the look of hand binding, but maybe your hands can't do hand binding anymore, you don't have the time to do hand binding, this is a great way to get like that hand bound look without hand binding and still being able to machine do it, because your stitches are hidden in this little fold right here. Okay, it adds a little decorative flair. It's great for very feminine quilts, but I had a friend who just did a giant king size FPP legit kit of the deer, and she did this. And so she had the brown border, and then she did this little pop of orange that pulled from the center of the quilt. And it really is a nice little framing touch. Okay, and so this right here is that little flange. I call it a peekaboo binding because I think the word flange is so aggressive and it's not as pretty as what this is, right? And I will tell you what my friend Jennifer said after she did her king size quilt. She watched my tutorial, which I'll link in a second, and she goes, okay, now that I've done flange binding, I don't think I can do it any other way. It was so much fun. So this is an option. If you want to do this on your quilt, you can. I would recommend making a little sandwich like I told her to do, which she did, and she practiced it. And then she did it on her big quilt, and she loves it. And she's like, once you go flange binding, it's hard to go back because it hides the stitch in there so nicely. And then when you stitch it, you do see it stitched on the back side, but that's the back of the quilt.
Right. That doesn't matter so much.
Everybody's going to be looking at the front part being, oh, that's so pretty. So I just wanted you to know that there are other ways to do binding, and you can really elevate it and have some fun. And it's not hard. It's not hard. So let me grab a link to that real quick, and I'll drop it in the chat, and you guys can save it to watch later because, you know, I don't have time to go over that today. We've already been live for over 2 hours, and Melody, I appreciate you hanging in there.
No, I've learned so much as well. I mean, we've had lots of comments that really appreciate all the things that we're learning, and I do as well, because now I'm going to try to quilt my quilt, I guess.
I know, and I've missed quite a few of the comments, so I will kind of take a second to go.
Well, I just want to show you guys. I actually made a sandwich.
Yay!
But I did my blocks.
It looks so good, Melody. I'm
now,
so proud of you.
I want to tell everybody that it's totally fine to mess them all up, because every one of mine are not 9.5-inch blocks. They're 9-inch blocks, because I was sewing at 3/8, not a quarter the whole way. So my finished one is going to be a little smaller than it says it's going to be. But I'm so happy about it. I showed my son, my 25-year-old son, last night when I got it all done and the edges all put on and everything. And I was like, oh my gosh, look what I did. Look what I actually did. I'm so proud of you. I did it, guys.
And Melody, I'm not going to make you cry, but your mom would be very proud of you too.
You are going to make me cry because that's the other.
I know, but she would, like, every step that you're taking, I know that she's so proud of you.
Well, that's the other thing that happened last night. I was telling Bethany part of the story anyway earlier. My father, who's just turned 89, lives at my house in the basement, and he came upstairs and he was like, what are you doing? Are you quilting? I said, yeah, I've got to get it done for the thing tomorrow. He's like, you're never going to get done. And I'm like, it's not a full bed quilt. And he's like, oh, okay, you'll get it done. And he looked at it and he goes, are you going to quilt it like your mother did? And I'm like, no. She only hand quilted. She only hand quilted. And I was like, no, I'm not. And he goes, your mom told you to do this, didn't she? And I said, yeah, she did. So
My
Yeah, I
goodness.
am going to cry, but I cry all the time. So that's okay.
All right, Joyce and Louise, I just want to say thank you for the compliment saying I'm a good instructor. That means the world to me. I know I threw a lot at you guys today, and I appreciate you hanging in, but this is recorded, so you can go back and watch all the replays as many times as you want, pause it, break it up. Even if you're watching along, and by the way, we still have a few more of these quilt kits left, and I'll drop a link to them in the chat.
Yeah, we do.
The Riley Blake quilt kits. So even if we're done with the sew along, but it's living on our YouTube. So you can still go get this kit and make it. But once they're gone, they're gone. So I'll drop a link in just a second. But I wanted to respond to a couple comments first. But I just appreciate you guys hanging in there with us. This was not a very beginner-friendly project for the size of it and all the little pieces. But what I love about quilting is once you do one block and then you have to do it 20 more times, it's very repetitive, and that is where your practice makes perfect in a sense. And we're never perfect because it's fabric, right? It stretches and moves, but that's where you build up your confidence. Okay, is that repetition. Lindell says, I'm a bit behind you gals. I'm still on day 1 sewing my blocks. I've gotten 6 done while listening to us today.
That's
Keep
fantastic.
going. You've got this. I want to see everybody's finished quilts in our, if you have Facebook, hop on over there, join our Caterpillar Creations Hub, and post a picture. I want to see it as you progress, or when you get the whole top done, or when you get it all done completely. I'd love to see it. So please share pictures over there and request to join our group if you haven't. Let's see here. Louise says she sewed through her finger while working after school in the local factory. It went right through my nail.
I know. I read that. That I cringed a little. I was like, oh, that hurts.
Can I tell you, Louise, I have sewn my finger before, but it didn't go through my nail because I have dip nails. I do my own dip nails. And so they're like acrylics, but not traditional acrylics, but they're solid. And it hit my dip nail, rolled off the side, and then got the side of my finger. So it didn't go through my actual nail. And I was saved by the dip nails. So now I consider these like OSHA approved.
Get your nails dipped, everybody.
Get your dip nails for safe sewing. Okay. And honestly, the only reason that happened was because I was distracted. I was sewing. My friend started talking to me, and I did not take my foot completely off my foot control. And as my foot relaxed while I was listening, it got me. So when you're done sewing, take your foot don't just lift the foot like we do when we're driving on the pedal. Like actually take it off.
Actually
set it away.
Set it down on the ground.
Like move your foot off and away. Joyce says your quilt top is pretty, Melody.
Thank you very much, you guys.
Diane says it looks so good. Louise said, wow, Melody. Everybody's very proud of you, including myself.
Thank you. I'm proud of me too. And I'm not usually one to be proud of myself for very many things, but I was.
Should be.
I'm pretty proud of it
too. And I'm impressed that you are at the same stage that I am, because you were traveling this weekend. So
I was traveling this weekend. So, but you weren't sewing this weekend either. Neither of us were sewing over the weekend.
I wish I'd been traveling. I was curled up in bed, miserable. What Joyce asked what the fabric is on this one. This is poppy cotton. I love poppy cotton fabric. I use them for a lot of things. And I think this is the Garden Party fabric line that they have. Stunning. Love. Joyce says, I'm going to do the happy mistake on the third corner when I do mine. Joyce.
I think that's great. I feel bad. I can't remember who asked us about that the other day.
I think
about what to do if you accidentally did that, but I think it's super cute that way. I think it's so great.
I think it's cute. It's a completely different.
It just looks so
different. It's a subtle difference. So here's the blocks with the points. Here's the blocks without the points.
It's almost like they're clovers, sort of. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like both. Yeah. And I'm glad I took the time to cut extra blocks for this one because I had a little extra fabric.
Yeah.
Joyce says, I can't sew with any distractions or I have to pull out Rosie the Ripper. I love you call it Rosie the Ripper. I call it Jack the Ripper. So yeah. Louise, I'm sorry about your finger. That hurts. But I mean, sewing can be dangerous. We've got sharp tools.
I am just proud of you for wanting to sew it all after that. I'll tell you that much.
when it happened to me, even though it didn't go through my nail, I thought it had. And knee-jerk reaction was to like do this. And so of course and I like sat there and I went, and I'm at a retreat with my friends that I was hosting, which made it so much worse. We're all in the woods in a cabin, and I'm like, and they all stopped and they looked at me and they could just see the
terror,
blood drain from my face. I turned into a ghost, and they're like, "Are you okay?" And I was like,
"Nope."
And they're like, "Did you just sew your finger?" And I was like,
"Yep."
and they like grabbed me, took me to the sink, and then my friends over here like trying to get, red stuff off my fabric, right. And clean it up and everything. And I was fine, but I was like shaking, and I put pressure on it. And then I went and sat in the bed for a minute, and it was like this big king bed. They all piled in the bed and they were just sitting around me. And then I was like, the shock kind of wore off, and I was like, that was really scary. I'm like, been sewing the longest out of everybody there, and I'd never done anything like that. And I mean, I've had needles like fly at my face and everything.
Yeah.
But that
scary.
was the first time I like had one of those big scares. So I mean, you just gotta slow down, pay attention, be aware of your surroundings. Yep. I learned my lesson. So I don't want to scare anybody, but at the same time, like learn from my mistakes.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyways, today was fun. Our quilt is done. When mine is officially done, and I'm going to try to quilt it tonight, I will post a picture of mine when it's done in the Facebook group if you want to hop over there and see it later. Hopefully by the end of this week.
I will post mine. Melody probably won't be tonight, but I will do that as well.
I won't be tonight either, but I'm going to at least try to get it quilted.
Yeah.
And then I got to square it up and bind it. But this whole process of just piecing it is honestly the most time consuming part. Quilting it, binding it, that's like the home run, like the final circle around third base. You're almost there. You've got this. I think I shared a lot of tips today, no matter what method you choose to like get it all the way to the end. Go through the binding process. I know we've been on a lot longer today than we have the last 2 times. Like I said, there's so many different ways to do it. There's no right way. There's no wrong way. There's your way. You need to decide what that is for you.
Yeah.
If you take nothing else from this today, practice first. If you never quilted, practice first.
I think that's what I'm going to try to do. Louise said that she's going to make her runner 2 blocks by 7 and use the other blocks to make placemats, which I think is adorable.
Love that.
And a really big table runner. So that's
a great. I need to see the finished tablescape with the smaller runner and placemats.
We'd love to see that. And then Joyce asked me if I'm going to do the quilting on myself, and I think I'm going to give it a go.
You are, because you've got this.
Yep, I'm going to try.
If you guys need anything, or if you're like, hey, I didn't catch that link or whatever, I can share those in the Facebook group too, like the link to my flange binding tutorial. All of this is available for replay. The links during the live stream, they don't show up later on. So like if you need any of that, just join our Facebook group and just tag me, my Craft with Bethany. I'm one of the admins on the group, so you can just say, Bethany, I need this, and just tag me so I see it, and I'll share whatever you need. I am not someone who gatekeeps. I will share all the things that I use, my tried and trues. Like I said, I've been doing this a long time, and you're going to have super fun time finishing this up. And if you guys really enjoyed this, one thing you could really help us with is to let us know. So go to the Facebook group and let us know. Send an email to support@cutterpillar.com and let us know. Because if you've enjoyed these sew-alongs with these kits, we need to know. If you want us to do more things like this is our first time doing one like this. Like, I've enjoyed this. Melody, have you?
You know what? I've enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would.
Yeah,
I did. I've had so much fun with it, and I didn't get in trouble at my house either for being procrastinating and crabby. So which I used to do all the time when I was garment sewing. And so I'm really excited about it. I would love to do more of these. I would love to learn more skills and do more of this stuff. But we need
a smaller project next time.
Maybe a smaller project the next time. But let us know, like Bethany said, either in the Facebook group or send us a quick email. What other kind of project you'd love to look at? Foundation paper piecing, English paper piecing, bag making, all kinds of stuff. We'd love to do all of those stuff along with you. We can find kits, we can find fabrics, we can put it all together. And we're more than happy to do that if that's something that you all want to do.
And I'm more than happy to teach it, because doing these is what fills my cup and keeps me going. And I love sharing all that I've learned over the years. And I am not an expert by any means. There's so many people that know more than I do, but anything that my goal is to just help people get started and find their confidence. So if you learn something today, share that with a friend, share it in the Facebook group. Like, oh my gosh, I learned something, even though I've been quilting for years, that I've never thought to do before. Maybe it's decorative stitches, Share that in the group, inspire others. I'd like to know what you took away from this whole sew along, all 3 parts, because that helps me make sure that I'm sharing what you want to learn as well. So thank you guys for spending this time with us. Again, we are in the middle of our Christmas. We just got started with our Christmas. We're not in the middle. We're just 2 days into Christmas in July.
Our Christmas in July. So
tomorrow we'll have another promo.
Yeah, we have another promo tomorrow. New products on special every day. Do a little demo, show you how they work. Now's a great time to jump in on some of the promos, because some of them are just crazy good deals. Like yesterday, both of our flip and fold mats, either one or both of them. If you're looking at those, it's a great time. They're 30% off on the website right now, but you can use that extra discount coupon code HOLIDAY to get an additional 15% off. That coupon code will go for any Caterpillar products on the website, but you can stack it with the discounts that are already there. So that's the fun thing.
If you missed yesterday's live about this deal and seeing the flip and folds in firsthand, there is a replay to watch yesterday's, and you can watch today's replay as well. Yes. And then if you don't want to miss a replay, you make sure you click notify on YouTube for the next one. So each day you can come back to this page and a new deal will be, and once they go live, they stay live. So yes, the flip and folds are still 30% off plus an extra 15% off with that code HOLIDAY. Today's was the Glow Mini light board with the tote, which 2 of my faves. And then tomorrow, honestly, unless I looked at the spreadsheet right now, I couldn't even tell you what tomorrow is. So I can't even give you a sneak peek. Melody probably knows.
I do know, but like we keep talking about so many different things that it's hard for me to keep track also.
I know. And it's not just tomorrow. We go through this week and then we do skip the weekend because Melody and I do need to sleep. And then we go into next week all the way through Thursday. So day 9 will be our last day. And we'll have new deals every day. And once they go live, they stay live for the entire time, but a new one happens every day. It's like a little advent calendar. I love it.
It's like a little advent calendar. And you guys, they will stay on sale, but we do have limited quantities on some of them. And so if it's something that you want, it's a good price and it's what you've been looking for, jump on it. We do have free shipping over $98. So you're good to order it and then order again later. If you find something else you want, that's totally fine. Or you can hold it in your cart for waiting to see and do it all at once. That's fine too. Whatever you guys want to do. But there are limited quantities on some of them. So keep an eye out on that. And yeah, it's a fun thing that we're trying to work on here for July, because I love Christmas and I love decorating for Christmas. And
I'm honestly surprised that our studio isn't more Christmassy right now.
Well, had I not been out of town the 2 previous weekends, it probably would have a full-blown tree in it. But I was talking on the live with Nathan yesterday, because I have 2 shows in September. I have Quilt Market and Quilt Festival in October. I have my vacation with my husband in August for 2 weeks. I'm going to start probably decorating for Christmas this weekend. I got to start.
Well, then I need some Christmas in the office, in the studio.
I might, if I start pulling it all out and seeing what I've got, I might be able to pull that off. I have a little bit of Christmas.
Yeah.
I have just a tiny bit of Christmas here. I have a little gingerbread and a little tree.
I see it now. Yeah, there's a little bit.
I do have a little hint.
You need like a wreath behind you between the shelves.
I know. I need a little something.
Or something. You have one of those giant nutcrackers?
Dude, I have 4-foot nutcrackers on my porch. Are you crazy? Okay. I've got 4-foot nutcrackers on my porch. I've got 3-foot nutcrackers in the house. I bought a really cool nutcracker in Hawaii when my husband and I were there for our anniversary in January.
We need some friends. Okay.
Lots of nutcrackers.
Everybody tell Melody that she needs to decorate the studio for Christmas in July series.
I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed with nutcracker deers and little houses right now. Like that's my jam all over the place. So Yeah.
I love it.
And of course trees. But anyway.
Well, this has been fun.
Yes.
I appreciate you guys so much for tuning in and hanging in there for all 3 series. Like I said, if you need help, message us over in the Facebook group, Caterpillar Creations Hub.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for sticking with us for all these days and long lives. And hopefully we'll get to do it again.
Yeah. Bye, guys.
Thanks, guys. Bye.